Despite the fact that NFL fields have some of the most intense security in the world, every once in a while, by one means or another, something that is not a player, coach, or official finds its way onto the NFL field. This often happens when a rogue fan has heaved it down, or occasionally a player or a member of the team staff is the vessel. But let's take a look back at 10 of the weirdest things that we've seen on an NFL field and run through the backstory that put him there. How about we start off with one that is probably one of the strangest things that we have on this entire list, and one that is likely to tug on the heartstrings a little bit: a player's father's ashes. The story takes place in Green Bay during the Packers' home opener against the Detroit Lions. Green Bay's running back Aaron Jones had decided to do something special to honor his father, who had passed away in April. The idea was simple but meaningful. When he stepped out on the field, he was wearing a necklace with a small football-shaped medallion which contained his father, Alvin Jones Sr.'s ashes. Now, if he were just to wear the necklace and have a mediocre game, it still would have been a nice gesture, but Jones had something else in mind. He exploded all over the Lions' defense, running wild for 4 touchdowns, 1 on the ground and 3 through the air, not to mention an additional 115 yards from scrimmage. The only problem? Well, apparently, during one of his 4 touchdowns, a Lions defender inadvertently ripped the pendant off of his necklace while trying to make a tackle. Luckily for Jones, one of the Packers team staffers, Brian Flea Engel, who works most of the time in the training room, was able to find Jones' prized possession. At 1:45 in the morning, no less. Needless to say, Jones was quite grateful after hearing the good news. "He found it, so we're perfect," Jones said. Thank you to him, he was out there until 1:45. It shows how much they care about us. Jones also took solace in the fact that it was found in the end zone, where he believes that his dad would have wanted him to lose it. Moving on to a much, let's say, less wholesome story of a misplaced object on the field, which happened perhaps in the most predictable place you could imagine. And of course, I am talking about the legendary Dildo incident that took place in Buffalo. The hated New England Patriots were in town, and as was par for the course over the last 20 years, they were putting a whooping on the hometown Bills. Late in the third quarter, with New England up by 14 points and deep into Buffalo territory, a fan decided to express themselves in a rather curious way by hucking a sex toy down on the field right next to Pat's wide receiver Chris Hogan. Hilariously, Tom Brady seemed to actually appreciate the moment, explaining, "I did see it. Yes, I did see it. I thought it was funny the ref didn't want to pick it up. He was kicking it. Nobody wanted to reach down and grab it. That was very unusual. That was a first. Only in Buffalo, that was very unusual." Yes, Tom, only in Buffalo, where it seems that tossing dildos down onto the field became a sort of tradition for a bit, as it happened again. And again. Suppose it's only fitting for the fan base that has made a reputation for its heinous pre-game table-smashing, beer-chugging rituals. Speaking of cities with a proclivity for putting foreign objects down on the field for staff to find, Philadelphia in many ways walked so that Buffalo could run. I mean, think about it. The city of brotherly love has a long, rich history of getting involved in these type of incidents. Take, for example, their apparent love of throwing batteries both at people in the stands and down onto the field. There was one reported instance back in 1999, and even Aaron Rodgers claims he has been a victim of Philly fans tossing batteries, he explained on the Pat McAfee show. "I think the rowdiest, the biggest, and the funniest trash talkers are in Philly. We had a stretch where we played them a few times in Philly, and one time I got hit with a battery in the helmet. I have to imagine that was a particularly strange cleanup experience for the grounds crew after the game, going about their business, and wait, a battery? But I guess that is what happens when your city is essentially known at this point for throwing the portable energy source down onto the field in games. So much so that Duracell, perhaps the world's most known battery company, took it upon themselves to put out a celebratory tweet on behalf of the city and their Eagles after the team won the Super Bowl in 2018. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find any video of the incidents, but it has been spoken about so much over the years that it's hard to believe that it isn't true. Besides, these are the same people that we have seen throw snowballs down on the field too. And listen, I know seeing snow on an NFL field isn't exactly odd, but I think that to see perfectly balled up snow projectiles getting into the mix qualifies as a strange item to me. Especially if you, I don't know, decided to throw them at Santa Claus. In fairness to the folks of Philly, while they are the only fan base I know of to have pelted St. Nick, they are certainly not the only one to have launched snowballs down to the field. We saw it happen in a rather consequential way during an old-school matchup between the 49ers and the Broncos. Now, we definitely don't want to encourage fans to start interfering with the actual play on the field in any way, but you have to think it was pretty damn satisfying to have your act of rebellion actually stop the opposing team from scoring. And there's no denying that having snowballs found on the field is a better net result than finding receptacles of beer on the field. which again is something we have seen a couple of different times over the years. Sometimes the can or bottle has found its way onto the field because a bad apple fan is trying to provoke a reaction from a specific player, like in the case of Ben Roethlisberger or former Seahawks defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson. And other times it has more so been an all-out mutiny of sorts. I'm looking at you, Cleveland. And the infamous Bottlegate game between the Browns and Jaguars, in which the fans decided to rain hell down on the field. I mean, look at this scene. Not a pretty sight, to say the least. Fortunately, we have now gone through the last of the entries on this list that towed, and in some cases blew past, the border of weird and downright destructive, so we can move on to some more lighthearted on-the-field discoveries. Say, for example, the random appearance of Skittles on the field. Now, it's not unheard of for a strange prop to be used in a celebration after a big-time score, but I have to admit that seeing a pack of Skittles as the prop was a little surprising, especially when it makes its entrance as a result of a fan celebrating instead of the players. As I am sure you might have guessed, this Skittles-related tale took place in Seattle when Marshawn Lynch was still the bell cow running back for the Seahawks, as he is far and away the most famous ambassador for the fruity candy. The Marshawn Lynch Skittles love affair started back in 2011 when Lynch was in the midst of a monster game against the Philadelphia Eagles that saw him total 148 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. After one of the aforementioned scores, the TV cameras panned and caught Lynch shotgunning Skittles into his mouth on the sideline. Unsurprisingly, Twitter and the internet in general loved this, and questions around Lynch's affinity for Skittles spread like wildfire. And in true Marshawn Lynch fashion, the backstory was awesome. It turns out that Lynch's mother, Delisa, had been giving him a bag of Skittles before games since he was playing in Pop Warner, and he had long since been downing them to celebrate touchdowns. I would give him a handful of Skittles and say, "Eat 'em up, baby," she said to Seahawks.com in 2012. "They're going to make you run fast and they're going to make you play good." Okay, at this point you get it, Marshawn Lynch loves Skittles. We've long known this, so where and how do they enter the picture? I am glad you asked. During a tightly contested divisional matchup with the Niners, Marshawn punched in a fourth-quarter touchdown to cap off a massive 14-play drive. And while he and the rest of the Seahawks were celebrating, a fan took it upon themselves to toss a pack of Skittles down into the end zone for the superstar running back. Unfortunately for the fan, Lynch didn't notice them, or I am sure he would have ripped the bag open and chugged the pack on the spot. Instead, Lynch trotted back to the sideline, and one of the officials moseyed on over and picked up the bag of candy. Marshawn did, to his credit, pay it forward, firing Skittles into the crowd at the Seahawks Super Bowl parade after they won. Moving on from the snack aisle, how about one of the times that a cell phone has been found on the field? Or well, it was eventually found after it was hidden there, that is. Some of our younger fans may not know this, but long before Michael Thomas unearthed a mobile device from beneath the goalpost in the midst of a tightly contested game with the, at the time, undefeated Los Angeles Rams, another legendary Saints wideout pulled a similar stunt. Joe Horn was the true creator of the on-field cell phone celebration, after he hauled in a pass from Aaron Brooks for a score back in 2003. Interestingly, because Michael Thomas is such a polarizing figure in the league, some people at the time actually negged him for being a bit of a copycat. But I like to give Thomas the benefit of the doubt and say he was paying homage to Horn, the Saints great, rather than trying to pass the celebration off as his own. Either way, both Thomas's and Horn's celebration gave us rather hilarious moments on the NFL field that resulted in foreign items getting in the mix on the gridiron. And while a cell phone is strange, I'd argue that in some ways it isn't as shocking as finding a paper airplane on the field. Sure, there's plenty of paper to go around in an NFL stadium, but anyone who has actually made a paper airplane recently will tell you getting one of those suckers to travel a few feet, let alone far enough that they will make it onto the field, well, it's no small undertaking. But that didn't stop one fan in the upper deck of a game at US Bank Stadium between Minnesota and Washington from trying. Honestly, that was probably a more impressive feat than anything that actually took place during the game itself. Can you imagine your surprise if you were on the sideline and you saw a paper airplane slowly but surely making its way down towards you? It would probably be almost as surprising as looking down during a game and finding a pair of scissors on the field, which has happened on a few occasions already this season. The first was in Week 10 during a game between the Chiefs and Raiders. Just as the KC offense was lining up for a play, Vegas defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson noticed something on the turf at Allegiant Stadium. 4 weeks later, during a game between Dallas and Washington at FedEx Field, it happened again, this time with Taylor Heineke finding the misplaced scissors. You'd think the trainers league-wide would have learned to be more careful with their scissors after the first incident, but guess not. Last but not least, we have a family fun classic, the beach ball, which has been a staple at ball games of all sorts for years now, as fans have bounced them around the bleachers during downtime forever. Even so, seeing one on the field at an NFL game is strange in part because they are generally associated more with baseball games than football games. But nevertheless, it was a lovely dose of comic relief in a rather boring matchup between the Bills and Bengals. What are some of the weirdest things you've seen thrown onto an NFL field during a game? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to do that by hitting that subscribe button down there. If you like the video, then hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. And until next time, tune in to TPS every single day for more cool videos. We'll see you.